of course, this series with the Brewers about as big as they come, right? I mean, at this point, I think it's besides the Padres series at the end of the season, these 7 games that the Diamondbacks have against this Milwaukee Brewers team is the most critical. And since they haven't played them, we have really no idea how they're going to match up with the Brew Crew. The Brewers are 83-62 this season with a plus 124 run differential. They've had a very good year. Not so great lately, like Jesse said, playing about 500 ball over the last month, 4-6 in their last 10. They're tied for the 14th best starting pitching ERA at 4.02, but their bullpen is incredible. Second best bullpen ERA in baseball at 3.15. They have a team OPS of 733, which is good for 11th, which was higher, for a considerable amount of the season. And then they are at 28 outs above average, which is good for 4th, right there behind the Arizona Diamondbacks.
Yeah, this is a good baseball team. And it's a different baseball team than the one the Diamondbacks saw in the postseason last year, right? I guess the most obvious difference is no Corbin Burnes. The Brewers made a very big trade over the offseason and got better by trading their ace. I think there's a chance the guys they got back in that deal could pay dividends in the long run, but they're not better because of the return of that trade. They're better because of other things that have gone well for this team. And one of the biggest ones is their offense. That was one of the main talking points going into that postseason series last year, was that the Brewers just don't hit like a lot of other teams that make the postseason do. Last year, Milwaukee had a team OPS plus of 91. So they were a well below average offense last year. Still managed to win over 90 games. This season, you saw there the OPS is 733. The OPS plus is 103. So that's a really big improvement from last year. And the big name to know here is Jackson Chourio, who is a 20-year-old outfielder who struggled early in the season, and since June 2nd is slashing 307, 366, 537. He is one of the best players in baseball, and I think is going to be for a long time. They already extended him. They gave him a big extension before he even played a game for them. And it looks like that's going to age pretty well, Derek, because he has been outstanding. And I know the NL Rookie of the Year discourse has all been about Paul Skeens and Jackson Merrill, but Jackson Chourio belongs in that conversation as well. He has been outstanding for these last few months.
These freaking kids named Jackson. It's amazing.
Yeah. That's like a big, like kind of a trendy question among the baseball nerds right now is pick your Jackson. Do you want Jackson Holiday, Jackson Chourio, or Jackson Merrill? Which of the three do you think will have the best career? And I have no idea. I'm not sure. Chourio actually might be my pick.
I feel like the Brewers are a criminally underrated franchise because I just always feel like they're good, but they're never considered to be a good team. Like, people don't talk about the Brewers. People don't say that the Brewers are like going to light the playoffs on fire. I think most people doubt that they'll maybe even get out of the first round with the way things are lined up for them. But they're a very good team, and they've kind of always been good, and that's where they remain. They're better this year, like you said. Somehow their rotation with Freddie Peralta, Colin Ray, Tobias Myers, Aaron Savali, and Frankie Montas, and DL Hall, they've somehow found a way. And it's baseball is like this, though. Like, I mean, we constantly I don't think stars impact the game of baseball nearly as much as maybe other sports, and I don't think stars like contract really help the teams, considering how crazy it gets when you get from being just like a player that was drafted by a team and you go through those first 5 or 6 years and then you break out and you get into that, big money, area like that teams like the Padres and the Yankees and stuff can afford to pay.
Yeah.
Like, I just don't necessarily know if baseball is one of those games where it makes that much of a difference, right? Corbin Burnes has been great for the Orioles, right?
Yeah,
like, it's not like he got off the team and was bad, or that, they got, but it's like overall, it feels like they're a better team. They're a more well-rounded team this year. And Diamondbacks have a lot of games left to play against them, like I said. Yeah.
And another name that stands out here is Wily Adames, their shortstop, who was okay last year, but this year has been on a whole other level. He has a 120 OPS plus, 30 home runs, 102 RBI from a shortstop. He is a free agent at the end of the year and is going to make, he might get like more than the Dansby Swanson contract. I mean, you might be looking at $200 million for Wily Adames this offseason. He has been that good this year, and I think projects to be very valuable moving forward. So, going back to your earlier point about the Brewers just kind of always being good, they have made the postseason in 5 of the last 6 years. They are above 500 basically every season, and I am among those who underestimated them this season. I don't think I'm alone in that category, but I picked the Cardinals to win the NL Central, which has not aged particularly well. Yeah, I'm ashamed, but
I tried to warn you about those Cardinals.
I do think the Brewers, on the flip side, in terms of like their weaknesses, I don't think that their starting pitching is as good as it has been this season. Almost all of their starters have outperformed their peripherals by a pretty wide margin. And some of those things have kind of bounced out in recent days. And I think that's partially why the Brewers haven't been playing as well lately. Colin Ray, maybe at the top of the list there. He gave up 10 runs, something like that, yesterday to the Giants. And he's a guy who's had like a low 3 ERA for most of the season. So, yeah, this team is not, it doesn't really have any weaknesses, but if I were to pick something that they are the worst at, I think their starting rotation is a little bit vulnerable in this post Corbin Burnes era.
Well, let's take a look at how that starting rotation lines up with the Diamondbacks in this upcoming series. The Brewers have Freddie Peralta matching up with Eduardo Rodriguez in game 1, which he flipped with Brandon Pfaadt. Is that right? Brandon Pfaadt was supposed to kind of start game 1?
Yeah. The Diamondbacks swapped Rodriguez and Pfaadt. And I think the idea there, as we talked about, I think I tweeted out the other day, to get Pfaadt an extra day. I think the D-backs wanted to make that a priority. So, yeah, Rodriguez moves up, Pfaadt moves back to get him that extra day. And then, as we said earlier, Zach Gallen moves up to start that Sunday game as opposed to starting on Monday.
And Pfaadt faces off against Tobias Myers there in game 2 of the series. And then they have Zach Gallen get moved up so that he does pitch in this series. And he faces off with left-handed pitcher DL Hall. Brewers ERA, very good there. Freddie Peralta, 3.81. Tobias Myers, 2.93. And then DL Hall there, 4.01. Diamondbacks saw Peralta in the wild card series last year. Yeah. And they handled him pretty well.
Yeah, wasn't he like perfect in 4 innings, and then he just totally unraveled in the 5th or something like that.
Just fell apart.
Yeah, the D-backs eventually got to him. He is a good pitcher, though. As you said, a 3.81 ERA. He's been solid this year. Tobias Myers has been a revelation for them with an ERA under 3.
Sub 3.
But again, this is a guy who, like, his expected ERA, his FIP, all those other numbers are in the low 4s. So I'm not sure I fully buy into Myers being a breakout guy on quite this level. But he's still a good pitcher. He has crazy ride on his 4-seam fastball. So that'll be something to watch on Saturday.
El Gallo 4978 says they suck against left-handed pitching. Let's hope that's the case.
We're talking about the Brewers sucking against left-handed pitching.
He says worse in the league. We'll verify that for you, but of course you might be right. And of course the whole thing here with the Diamondbacks is that this is the main one. I feel like they need to figure out if they can find a way, have a good game plan here against the Brewers and find a way to win both series that they have against them. That would be 5 wins in 7 games. And I mean, 5 wins puts them at 87 with a series against the Rockies still on the schedule and a series against the Giants on the schedule.
One thing with the starters that we haven't addressed is that Ryan Nelson was basically skipped this turn through the rotation, which is a little odd. He pitched on Sunday, of course, against the Astros, and he is not scheduled to pitch this weekend.
Is he going to start against the Rockies?
My guess is that he will start against the Rockies. I don't think he'd pitch the first game of the series because Torrey was asked and confirmed that he wanted to keep Gallen. He wants to keep Gallen and Kelly back to back moving forward, which you can understand going into the playoffs. I'm guessing that Ryan Nelson will pitch on Tuesday against the Rockies. And that's interesting for a variety of reasons. One of them being, do the Diamondbacks reshuffle their rotation in this way to make Ryan Nelson their third starter? Do they want to go into the playoffs with Zach Gallen number 1, Merrill Kelly number 2, and Ryan Nelson number 3? I don't know if that was part of the calculus, but it's a question that I have to ask because it's a little weird that they skipped Ryan Nelson when I know he wasn't great on Sunday against the Astros, but he's been a really good pitcher for this team lately, and they're giving him a whole lot of extra rest here.
What are you doing? What are you doing as manager?
What am I doing as manager?
Is Ryan Nelson your third pitcher in the playoffs?
In the playoffs? That's a good question.
It's hard, right? Because, I mean, I just can't help but think about how good Brandon Pfaadt was last year. And I know Brandon Pfaadt has had a big workload this year. I know that we talked to Torrey about if he thought that Brandon pitch too much, and it didn't sound like it. He said his velocity hasn't dropped or anything like that. Right,
pretty much similar.
Stuff still looked good, but we'll see. We'll see how things stack up when the playoffs come around.
Yeah, I think it's interesting this year. I've heard, I haven't looked at the schedule myself, but from people that I very much trust, apparently in the division series this year, if you play a 5-game series, you play all 5 games in the division series, you need 4 starters with how the schedule lines up. Whereas last year, the D-backs were able to get away with 3 starters in that Dodgers series. So obviously they only played 3 games. That was part of it. But even if they had gone to 5 games, the D-backs would not have needed to use a bullpen game in that series. Whereas this year, you are going to have to use 4 if the series goes its full length. So even in division series, you might have to pitch both Ryan Nelson and Brandon Pfaadt. But I don't know. It's a really interesting question. I mean, Ryan Nelson's pitching a lot better recently. So I would probably lean toward him. And I wonder if that's part of the D-backs thinking here is like, we really believe in him and we want to set him up behind our top 2 guys. And maybe that's the way it stays throughout the playoffs.
Jagurtha is with it, Jesse.
Okay.
Jagurtha says Ryan Nelson is the most consistent pitcher all season. Not
at least like since June. Yeah. I mean, Ryan Nelson has been the most consistent pitcher on this team by a pretty wide margin in that span.
Gabriel Ferrer wants to Frankenstein him and says big game Brandon for 2 times through the order, then nasty Nelly to finish it off.
Yeah, that's another option. That's fair. You wanted to like try to tag team them. It might depend on, you don't want to like
tag team.
Well,
sorry, I'm not sure. I'm like, I don't even know if you really know the wrestling reference there, but I got excited. It was a pro wrestling reference.
An inadvertent wrestling reference on my part. My mistake. That's interesting. My guess is you probably would want to avoid that. Especially, I imagine that would put you in a difficult spot for like the next series or the next game or whatever. If you were or later within that series, if you used both of those guys on the same day, because again, you're going to need 4 starters pretty much throughout this postseason run. Eduardo Rodriguez is another name we should mention here. Like I can't. We're not like dismissing Eduardo Rodriguez as a guy the D-backs might want to use in the playoffs. There's still certainly time for him to turn things around and show that he's deserving of that opportunity.
But they're in a much better position than they were last year when after Brandon Pfaadt, you pretty much had bullpen game as your next option, right?
So I don't think we're going to see that.
Let's not forget about that, shall we?
We all silly like the mayor.